Hi, my name is Massa. When I was a kid and I went trick-or-treating, I always loved getting Snickers bars. You'd have to suffer through endless amounts of Smarties, Necco wafers, and Mike and Ike's until you finally got one Snickers bar. Then there was that one rich guy on the block who'd give you full-size Snickers bars, and that guy made you feel rich. But you weren't rich. You were just a stupid kid. During my early cooking content years, I expressed my love for Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. And one rude commenter scoffed by saying, "Sweet Baby Ray's? That has so much sugar and so many calories, you might as well put a Snickers bar on your ribs." I've mentioned this comment several times before because it stayed in my heart. A heart full of clogged arteries. Because I eat so much Sweet Baby Ray's. However, that got me thinking, what if I did make a rib that tasted like Snickers? Now, I learned a lesson from my pumpkin spice latte ribs experiment that you shouldn't aim to make the ribs taste exactly like your target food because, well, it's much too weird. You need the flavors to balance with the ribs. So I'm going to use Snickers as a prompt to create a ribs recipe that evokes Snickers without overpowering what makes ribs great. Because in the end, I don't want to throw away a whole rack of ribs into the trash. I've done that a few times. I've done that. First, we'll tackle the outer layer, chocolate. I seem to remember coming across a recipe for chocolate barbecue sauce, so I cracked open my favorite barbecue book, Meathead, and lo and behold, there's a recipe for a chocolate barbecue sauce, so that's what I made. Into a saucepan goes 1/2 cup of water and 3/4 cup of regular white sugar. Whisk that around and simmered it to get the sugar to dissolve. And then I added 3/4 of a cup of rice vinegar. A 1/2 cup of tomato paste, whisked that to combine, before adding 1/4 cup of orange juice, which may seem a little weird, but you've surely had a chocolate orange shoved into your stocking at some point, right? It goes. Then I added 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. I'm using Ghirardelli's. 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1/8 teaspoon of chipotle chili powder. Whisked that all together to combine, and then simmered it on the stove for about 30 minutes. And after that, you can see it thickened up and easily coats a spoon. Looks perfect, so I took it off the heat and poured it into a container until the ribs are done. And speaking of ribs, we have a nice rack of baby back ribs with the membrane removed. To start, I'll season them with a bit of kosher salt. Now if we look at our Snickers cross-section, the next bit we'll tackle is the caramel. And for that, I spied this caramel popcorn seasoning at the store and decided to give it a try. It's mostly just sugar and brown sugar and assorted other chemicals, and it does smell like caramel. So we'll use this as an ingredient in our rub. I sprinkled a generous amount of it on both sides of the ribs. Then I sprinkled both sides with paprika and cayenne pepper. I know what you're thinking. EJ Massa, you vapid dumpster of a human being. There's no paprika or whatever in Snickers. No, but the spice will help tie the room together, so to speak. The spice goes with the chocolate, like a Mexican hot chocolate, and it goes with the ribs. And it'll work like a bridge between the chocolate and the ribs. Now for the peanut portion of the candy bar. I have dry roasted peanuts and I put them in a coffee grinder and coarsely chopped them up. Not quite making a peanut butter, but making it finer than just chunks of nuts. And then I patted it onto the ribs. I also finished it off with more caramel seasoning and paprika. What about the nougat? Well, my friends, that's the ribs itself. Because when you cook ribs low and slow, they become tender and soft, like nougat. So let's fire up the grill. Let's see if we've made something delicious, or maybe we've made something horrible, like monster ribs.
Out from the kitchen, Drax's voice did ring. Seems he was troubled by just one thing. He exclaimed in a panic, there must be some mistake, and said, "Whatever happened to my Transylvanian steak?
It's now these ribs,
It's now the monster rib
the monster ribs.
that you can eat with a bit
Don't make a mess,
when you're enjoying your ribs.
those monster ribs.
It's now the monster rib. It's good. Igor, you impetuous slob, Save some ribs for the rest of us.
Let's go.
So let's see if this is an abomination or if it's any good. It doesn't taste like Snickers, but it's very interesting. It's even pretty good. So unlike my pumpkin spice ribs, the flavors here mesh with the pork way better. And the peanut crumble spread on there, also, I thought it was going to be much more peanut buttery and overpowering, but actually in the smoker, all that peanut butter smell subdued, and the taste, it actually leaves a little bit of a creaminess to it. Even though it's kind of like chopped fine peanuts, it adds a creamy note to it. Inside the barbecue sauce itself, there's a lot of acid from the orange juice and the rice wine vinegar, and that actually, it like coats the mouth and it delivers some of that chocolate flavor to you. And the one ingredient that I'm not really getting much of is the caramel popcorn seasoning. So if I were to do this again in the future, I'd probably use just like brown sugar or something like that. Way more successful than my pumpkin spice ribs, which were way too much like pumpkin spice latte, almost exactly tasted like it. This evokes the flavors of Snickers without overpowering it. It meshes better with the pork itself, being a more delicious treat. So I don't know, I at least recommend the barbecue sauce. The peanuts are just the weird innovation that I think kind of goes. And actually the next day, I had the ribs as leftovers for lunch, and the flavors blended even more. And that caramel flavor that was subdued when the ribs were fresh, it was more pronounced. My 2-year-old even jumped on my lap and licked the ribs clean. So these were quite a hit in my house, and you know what? I hope you have a great Halloween. I will not be making Necco wafer ribs. You can't make me. I won't do it. Check out my video next week when I make Necco wafer ribs. Before I go, I want to shout out Dan from Super Bob Hoskins Brothers. He made that awesome parody of Monster Mash. And if you like my content, you like my humor, I think you would really like Dan's work, because I think our humor is there. It's cousins. He does more gaming content. I do some. He does mostly gaming content. But yeah, if you enjoy my humor, you'll like Dan and Super Bob Hoskins Brothers. Go check them out. Until next time, bye.
DJ was having fun. The cooking had just begun. The guests included Zach, Frankie, and our Junt.